After 9 entries in the series, it appeared that the Tony Hawk franchise had finally come to roost at a place where only vets could succeed. Needlessly complex gameplay had made it bloated to the point where it was difficult to enjoy. The series is due for a reboot, and so Activision has given Tony Hawk Ride an extra year in the incubator and come out of the workshop with a brand new skateboard Peripheral that's supposed to increase the realism and fun. Has it improved? Either. There's no story this time around. Not that we'll miss the stereotypical young gun trying to make a name for himself routine, but without it, there's no glue to hold a single player together. Instead, you get a series of events held at each location until you satisfy enough conditions to open up the next location, where the process repeats. With only 3 mission types, there's not much variety either. There are speed contests where you attempt to get to the end of the course as quickly as possible, tricks where you try to roll up the biggest score before time runs out, and a series of challenges where you're asked to complete specific tricks on specific objects. Toss in free skate, and you've run the gamut. Online, things are even more bare bones. You can compete with 3 other players in both the speed and trick competitions and check out the leaderboards. That's it. There's also local party play where you and 7 friends can take turns, but the franchise has basically gone from inflated to emaciated. There are 6 unique locations that become unlocked as you play, along with boards, trucks, wheels, skaters, clothing, etc. The standalone levels are laid out like tracks in a racing game, with a long linear line that you can follow for a long distance. You can stop and session a particular object if you want, but the controls don't exactly encourage it.
Hey, thanks for picking up Tony Hawk Ride. What you have in your hands is one of the most advanced game controllers ever made, and we are stoked that you're about to experience skateboard video gaming at its best.
The new board Peripheral is sturdily built, but the accelerometers and sensors don't do it any favors. They simply don't work. You have to push down on the tail or nose for ollies and nollies respectively, and that works the majority of the time. The rest of the tricks rely on pressing down on the board at particular spots after an ollie or nollie. This is where things begin to fall apart. Consciously pulling off a flip trick versus a tilt trick like an impossible is impossible. There are sensors on all 4 sides of the board that you're supposed to trip to pull off grabs, but they can be triggered by almost anything, making it difficult to get the timing right. It all results in one big mess, and we haven't even mentioned trying to actually steer. This is where it goes from bad to worse. The bottom of the board is beveled, and the flat surface is so narrow that you feel like you're standing on a board with a blade down the middle instead of 4 stable wheels. Removing a foot to push and trying to keep the board from slumping to one side or the other at the same time will literally cramp your feet. On the confident difficulty setting, it's infuriating, and on the hardcore setting, it's absolutely maddening. Thankfully, the game includes a casual setting where it does the steering for you, and without it, we wouldn't have been able to make progress through the game. Even on this setting, you'll find the board constantly flying out from under your feet as you struggle to prepare for each obstacle. You can do 360 spins and your on-screen character will actually mimic it, but it takes too much practice for those who haven't been skating their entire lives. And reorienting yourself so you're headed straight again for a landing just adds to the frustration. As you land tricks, you build up a meter that will allow you to pull off slow-motion signature moves. They look flashy, but slow down the pace of the game. When you skatevert, you have to orient the board to its side, and at least the game is playable in this state, since you can't bump into objects. Manuals also feel fairly realistic, but otherwise, you're better off buying a real skateboard and learning the real thing.
Now trust me, you're going to need it at the end.
It's definitely easier to ride a real one in a straight line. This year's game features a cartoony art style with some semblance of cell shading. We don't have a beef with it, but clipping and detection issues provide some pretty deep scars. The trick list has been cut short due to the board's limitations, but the ones that are here are fairly well animated. Pro skaters return in-game and in full motion video with some uninspired shtick about going for yours or whatever. They're not very convincing or motivating, and they're presented with some sort of visual effect, but it fails to hide how little time or energy was actually spent on them.
Alright already, no time for gloating, we still have plenty of work to do. But yes, you're amazing.
Tony Hawk games have traditionally had some solid soundtracks, and while the selection can't really be faulted, the total number of tracks is seriously lacking. can see some faint glimmers of what Tony Hawk Ride could have been, but the technology inside the board peripheral simply doesn't hold up. From the cumbersome load times to the malfunctioning board, it's just clunky. If you set it to casual and bring it out at a party, it will draw some interest, but it won't take long before everyone realizes it's work to play, and ultimately not very fun. At a steep $120, it's a bit of a wipeout.